Good morning.
Good morning.
Today is Sunday, July 21st, 2024. Let's begin by saying the four measurables prayer, which we use to set our intention, make aspiration. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. Thank you. So we haven't really met in a while, but here we are again. I wanted to read to you something, and then Victoria's going to read something she's been thinking about, and then we'll meditate. This is from Khandro Rinpoche, who's a really amazing teacher. We've spoken about her in this class and read quotes from her. Speaking about bodhichitta, which do you want to describe what bodhichitta is before I read this?
No, go ahead.
Bodhicitta is really the, love and kindness kind of ripen to its, full potential, where, it's for the benefit of all beings, not just a kind of, compassion that is limited to people that touch you, or you feel something for, or you feel pity for, or you feel are deserving of something like that. It's a radiant energy of love that just pervades everything and is without any kind of bias, and is in the realm of the non-dual more than it is self and other. It's really about this radiant love for all beings. That is the quality of a Buddha, basically. And there's stages along the path of developing that kind of loving kindness, but it's something that without there's no realization, there's no enlightenment. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just as you were talking, it came to my mind that we really have to distinguish between ordinary mind, which always thinks in terms of oneself and projects outward, and wisdom, which is what the nature of mind abides in. And wisdom does not distinguish, as Michael said, between self and other. And so bodhicitta is this kind of culmination of wisdom, which acts spontaneously for the benefit of others, because the self has been extinguished, because the ignorance of myself has really kind of, taken this back seat. It no longer drives and guides our life. Of course, we have to, in ordinary situations, maneuver through, I am the one who's touching this object, I'm the one who's crossing the street, I'm the one who's taking my kid to school. But there's an ultimate level of mind that we call wisdom, and that is the space from which this love for others and their welfare arises spontaneously, because we are simply no longer like the center of our whole existence any longer. That's what wisdom really is. And there are two kinds of bodhicitta, ultimate and relative. We start with the relative bodhicitta, where we think of how do we love immediate others, which situations we experience love, when we apply it, especially to those people who are difficult in our life. And so we cultivate that flavor where we learn the freedom of not being biased. We have the freedom of loving despite, the actions of others. And an ultimate bodhicitta is really understanding the state of how things abide.
And these things are part of the path, progressing developing these qualities, getting in touch with these qualities is part of the path that you are on as a Buddhist, the methods of Buddhism. But let me just read this, so because it's pretty profound. The basis from which bodhicitta can arise. There are 4 primary conditions upon which bodhicitta can be based and generated. Number 1, bodhicitta, whether you call it good-heartedness, loving kindness, enlightened heart, or awakened heart, is able to arise from innate wakefulness. If you are someone with an innate power of reflection or thoughtfulness, gentleness, and quietness, if you are able, without depending on any external supports, to wake up to the feeling that bodhicitta resonates in your mind, this is one way that bodhicitta can be generated. Virtue is about using your senses in a way that is responsive to the needs of others. Second, bodhicitta is generated through the strength of a virtuous life, which means one's virtuous attitude and conduct. Such virtue is nothing profound. It means being mindful and consciously aware of how your actions and speech affect others. When you go to a restaurant, for example, and some wonderful person holds the door open so you can pass through, that is a simple gesture of virtue. Virtue is about decency. It's about respect. Virtue is about using your senses in a way that is responsive to the needs of others. If that kind of virtue is naturally strong in you, even if you cannot say the Sanskrit word, you can be sure that bodhicitta resides in your heart. Third, bodhicitta is said to arise from the strength of meditation and contemplation. Through the power of meditating and contemplating, you may meet with the inner wisdom awareness. That very simple clicking in brings the awareness that the actions of your body, speech, and mind do impact the lives of others. You cannot be careless with your attitude or actions, because this is not, as many of us believe, just your life. Our lives do depend on others. In the same way, many lives do depend on us. When what I say and do, my personality, mannerisms, and behavior, my likes and dislikes all have an immense impact on the lives of my family and friends, the people I work with, my community, society, and the world at large. When that awareness arises as the resultant state of contemplation, meditation, or reflection, that is also a point where bodhicitta can arise. The 4th basis from which bodhicitta can arise is what you are experiencing by being in the presence of an enlightened spiritual master whose very life is an inspiration to cultivate bodhicitta. This is the 4th way one may be inspired to meet with bodhicitta. Then you don't have to spend so much time philosophizing about one of the most simple, beautiful, and most cherished qualities of human nature, loving kindness, which is bodhicitta. It is very helpful to explore these 4: innate wakefulness, the strength of virtue, the strength of meditation, being in the presence of great beings who exemplify great compassion and loving kindness. These are the bases, B-A-S-E-S, bases from which bodhicitta can arise. Victoria, if you would like to.
We attended 2 teachings by Kangsa Rinpoche these yesterday and day before yesterday, and something that he said, which was a huge reminder and really made me think about how useful it could be for all of us to think about it and always to keep this in mind. And namely what he said, he gave a definition for happiness. And this is a classical formulation in Buddhism. It is repeated, from one teacher to another. These are the words of the Buddha, really. Happiness is the absence of afflictive emotions or negative states of mind, right? Happiness is, of course, a mental state, just as suffering is a mental state. It is experience. So it is in the realm of awareness. Actually, everything is in the realm of awareness. Everything that connects to us, anything that happens to us is in the realm of awareness. We have two ways in which we can perceive it, in the way of through our ego kind of, composition, that dualistic mind where I'm the center of the universe, and that mental state, that dualistic ordinary mind where I am kind of the center linchpin and then everything is radiated outward, is what we call samsara. Samsara is suffering and ignorance. It is suffering because this little composed sense of I, it's so fragile, it's so insecure, it's so undefined and always kind of disappearing. We're always trying to hold this river of experience back and stabilizing it, this whole movement of existence. And we try to pin these kinds of identities upon ourselves. And it's a great source of suffering. We also have to remember that the suffering that we experience as an external phenomenon, as the world outside is this painful thing, has a lot to do with our projection, because what we experience to such a great extent comes from inside to the outside. The person we call a difficult person, the difficult is the judgment, is a projection that we pin on someone. We could also take that same difficult person and say that person is right now experiencing tremendous amounts of suffering of anger and ignorance. They're like a sick person. Their mind is very afflicted. We, for example, never say that, serial killers or, violent people, that they're completely okay mentally and emotionally speaking, right? We all acknowledge that there are deviations or there are deficiencies with their mental states. That's why people are capable of things like that, or desire things like that. So, if we take that definition that, that happiness is the absence of afflictive emotion, and in reverse, that unhappiness is the projection from the inside and interpretation of the world as always hostile, and of beings as always, something always kind of like positioned to take something away from us, the fear that they may not like or dislike us, the fear that we may be judged by them, etc., that they may take away something from us. It all shows the center of the I, this vulnerable I, that is surrounded by the five afflictions. Why do the five afflictions arise when the I is the center of our world? It's because of that fragility of the ego. It's because, what the ego does, it lives through fear. Something gets taken away from me. I may lose my job. I may lose this. My love, my source of income may dry up. I may lose this big house. These are the things of craving and desire. These are the things of avarice. If the ego observes someone having more, instead of rejoicing for them and being happy, very often our ego becomes, because it's so vulnerable and small-minded, we think, why does he have it and I don't have it? So anger arises. These afflictive mental states are then projected to the outside, and we start to see the world is hostile, us as not having enough, others as having more, us being angry at them, etc., etc. The web spins indefinitely and incessantly. And the point of it all is, of course, is we cannot clean up the whole world, but what we need to work on is cleaning up our own internal mess, the afflictive negative mind. We have to become aware, and that's what practice is. Practice is removing the negativity out of our mind, because that negativity is not something that's just out there like a cloud. That negativity is us projecting and judging things on the outside. But, practice is also leaving things as they are. And that doesn't mean being passive and never doing anything, but practice does mean knowing our own states of mind and cultivating virtuous rather than unvirtuous things. So when we start to meditate now, let's see how many thoughts arise that are just judgments and projections. If you're going to think of a person who's difficult to you, instead of thinking that is a difficult person, become aware of your vulnerability in the relationship to that person. Become aware that your ego gets hurt by when that person does a certain things or something else. And you become hurt also by you projecting that immediately onto the person, that your openness to that difficult person is now closed and removed. There's, in that vacuum, a person cannot be different toward us if we've already prejudged them and put them into that prison of these labels and of these judgments. We'll experience them ourselves only as a difficult person, and they may never really become something else to us. It'll be very difficult to become surprised if our mind is not open. And that's the ignorance. That's kind of like the basic ignorance of the state of things out there and the state of ignorance regarding our own nature. Whereas actually our own nature is just mere mind, mere perception, mere knowing. When we experience things, we just simply, we're open to them and we're aware of their presence and we let them be. Our experience does not cease, this wisdom or emptiness. Emptiness is another word for wisdom, because wisdom is something that knows how things really abide. And wisdom also knows our own nature. Wisdom is something that connects instead of to the ego and the judgment and the fear and all this cloud of negativity that springs out from me, mine, I need this, give me that, why don't I have this, why does he have that, he made me angry, he didn't look at me like this, he didn't dress like this, and all these kinds of like the things that start to spin out of this twofold ignorance of not knowing our own condition, forgetting our Buddha nature and not connecting to it, and also projecting the out there world and not really knowing how things truly abide. When we go into our meditation now that Michael is going to lead us, let's try to do the work of cleaning our mind. Let's remove the negative thoughts and let's replace them by letting things be as they are, by letting judgment, kind of the fire of judgment and fear, die down. Allow for things to emerge, do not attach to them, and try to also, that's like one part of the cleaning the house. And the other part is really bringing good things into the house. It's like removing the clutter and bringing good things in, bringing virtuous things, instead of labeling someone difficult or bad or this or that, all these ego-driven fear-mongering things, because that person is not giving us exactly what we expect. And becoming aware that that's where all this arises from. It's not like things are there in themselves. Things come from inside and are projected to the outside, and then we're reacting to that. It's like we're reacting. Our mind is often referred to as a mirror. In the mirror, all kinds of things may appear, killings and beauty and flowers and, horror and beauty can appear side by side, but the nature of the mirror, the surface of the mirror, never really gets changed. And that is the timeless awareness. That is the nature of mind, rather than all these kinds of happenings. And also, the happening of the ego, this kind of like subversive, this I that takes over our life. So when we start to meditate, let's try to think of the things that do make us happy. Why do we always focus only on the negative things? Why do we not remember that we have this precious human birth, that we have met with Dharma and that Dharma exists at this time, that we have teachers in this world who are living Buddhas, that there are so many kind and good people, that there's so much kindness and welfare despite all the difficult things and the negativity. Why don't we refocus? And also, when difficult things arise in our mind, why don't we remember that difficulties arise also? It's our karma and it's our blessing to take these difficulties and transform them into the path and make them into practice instead of just labels and reactions. Why don't we take that difficult person or difficult circumstance, and instead of just labeling them and being triggered and producing even more deeper scars of negativity on our mind, why don't we say, well, I'm here for you, I'm willing to work with this, I'm willing to give you all the happiness that I have. And the way we do it is very, very easy. We just use the four immeasurables. And for that very difficult person, when they arise in our mind, we can either do Tonglen or simply bring the four immeasurables to the mind and say, may you have happiness, may you be free from suffering, etc., etc. We have the means to clean house, and we really have the obligation, if we don't want to go on with ignorance and suffering for the rest of our life, but use this precious human existence and this human precious vessel of the human body, where we can sit in the 7-point Vairocana posture and do meditation. We have this precious Buddha mind, this jewel, but we waste it constantly on this negative flutter and bubbles of the sediment always coming up from this disturbed ego mind. Let's try to use the meditation in what it's supposed to be and clean our house. And when we clean our interior, our world will also start to clean up, because when we're not projecting negative things day and night, when we become like not this factory of negative thoughts and judgment all the time, our life is naturally, I mean, why when we experience our masters, they're always so happy? Do they not have old bodies and not experience the ravages of illness and old age and all the stupid things that we ask them as students and come to them with, give me this and give me that, all this incessant stuff? But we experience them as that because they have diminished the ego, they have cleaned the mind of the afflictive, of the stains of afflictions, and so they can look at us as these little children and they can give to us incessantly, because Buddhists have an infinite amount of love. Love is not a finite thing. It's not like this meal that begins here and ends there. It's that's what the nature of bodhicitta is.
So when we meditate, let's remember this, let's take this into our minds and hearts when we sit down. Well, like when we start the meditation, we say the four immeasurable prayers, or reading this, what I read about bodhicitta, or what Victoria was saying about basically transforming the mind. That's what we're doing here. That's why we're meditating. It's not just to be a kind of easier, better version of ourselves, to make our lives easier. I think a lot of Eastern spiritualities, especially meditation, Buddhism to some extent, yoga, these are spiritual practices that we have to be very careful adopting them into our Western culture. A lot of yoga practice is basically, a workout. There are, I'm sure, lots of yogis and yoga teachers who teach from a spiritual point of view, and the way it originally was, taught. But a lot of it's kind of degenerated into just another kind of aerobic exercise and stretching and things. And meditation as well can become this thing that's like, so you can kind of calm down, so you can like have less stress and be this super version of the ego and self that you've already created. It's like these worries and these difficulties and these stressors are things in the way of me kind of letting the self have this, unfettered reign, if you will. So, and that's not really the point, you know. We're cultivating a mindfulness and an awareness, like Victoria said, so we can have some kind of, you know, awake experience of what's going on. What are we doing inside of our mind, and how are we interacting? You know, what are we doing inside of our mind? How are we thinking about our own responses and impulses and reactions, and how are we interacting with the world? And are we moving towards a more enlightened version of that, where it's not just what's good for me and the self and others, or are we really kind of being able to transform, you know, this mind into something more enlightened, something on the way to realization, awakeness, loving kindness, compassion for all beings, really, and not just for us, not just for the ones close to us, the ones that we think deserve it. We have to remember that when we practice meditation, or if you're setting onto a path of some kind of Buddhist practice, you know, it's not just for us to feel better. That may happen as a byproduct, but it's, you know, somehow we can really miss the point if that's what we're using it for. You know, like Zongsar Khyentse Rinpoche, someone we quote from, one of the great masters of our time, who's teaching very, very often on his YouTube channel, Siddhartha's Intent. He's teaching all the time and in very profound ways. There's a book called Not for Happiness, which is, you know, kind of exactly what the point that I'm trying to make. It's not just for happiness while we're here, for the happiness of our own comfort. It says, you know, if you really just want to kind of relax and calm down, a full body massage is probably a better mode to do it than meditation, you know, because meditation is, it's not just this, you know, relaxation modality, you know, much more than that. So with that in mind,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing to clarify. I meant to say it, but I forgot. So just as Michael was saying, you know, we're not chasing pleasure. Happiness is not pleasure. It's not some kind of stimulation for the moment and we want more of it and we become even more attached and afflicted. What I wanted to say, so if cleaning the negativity, removing the stains of ignorance, removing the stains of judgment, removing the stains of projecting, you know, our ego onto others, etc., is the path, it's the method. The result is when it is removed, happiness dawns by itself. Happiness and wisdom are the same thing. Bodhicitta, you know, bodhicitta is like the warmth of the sun, and wisdom is like the light of the sun. They are one and the same thing. Those things will dawn when everything is stripped away and the basis of our Buddha nature can be revealed. You know, in the same way as our wisdom will be revealed by removing the ignorance, our happiness will replace the suffering when the negativity is removed. Basic cleaning, you know, when the mind is clean, it can reveal its own jewel-like nature. Bodhicitta is a consequence of wisdom. It's one and the same. Because when there is no ego, what do we act for? It becomes easier and easier to act spontaneously from the right place. So those, you know, this is what is called the result. You know, the cleaning, the checking one's mind all the time, day and night, not just for the 20 minutes we're going to sit, you know, or whatever your meditation cycle is, formal sitting sessions, but checking it day and night, even in your sleep, you're checking your mind. Is my mind filled with negativity? You know, take it out, remove it. Just remember, you know, we're only attached to these negative things because we've done that habitually. It doesn't mean that they have some kind of reality in and of itself. It's just something that we've cultivated an inclination for repeating and repeating and repeating this way of looking at all things. And always remember to to go back to your own Buddha nature and the Buddha nature of others. When you're experiencing difficult people, don't forget they are Buddha nature. All beings have Buddha nature. All sentient beings are powered by the same battery, by the same awareness, Buddha nature. We all have the same mind. Some of us are more removed from it, meaning there are more layers of dirt over it, and so we act, or they act, out of stupidity, out of the affliction. But underneath it all, the one battery that powers it all is Buddha nature. We just have to get to the clean state of it, and that's what practice is.
Okay. And practice is not just on the cushion. That's a very important thing. But let's be on the cushion right now. So I use a cushion just to get the hips either aligned or above the knees. That can make it a lot easier. Some people can just sit on the floor and they're fine. Depends on your body and your flexibility and your comfort level. If you need to use a chair, you can, but just make sure the chair is not some kind of reclined thing. Your back should be straight, not rigid. And if you're in a chair, your feet should be on the floor, and your legs should be in the same way, hips either aligned or slightly above the knees. And the hands, we do this. So the left hand palm is open, the right hand goes on top in the lap. You can put your hands just on your knees like this. Some people do this. That's fine. The important thing is to let them rest. There's not a tension there. The straight back is important for meditation, but it shouldn't be a very military rigidness. It should just be a very supple but erect, spine. The same with the head, but the head should be tilted slightly forward. The mouth should be relaxed. Lips are pretty much closed, but gently. And the teeth are a little bit apart. And the tongue rests between the top teeth and the roof of your mouth. So you're breathing through your nose, unless you can't. In this class, we meditate with our eyes open, which some people may find strange if you haven't done this class before, or if you're used to meditating with your eyes closed. But we like that technique. We've been taught that technique, and it's helpful, because meditation sometimes becomes this thing of spacing out and detaching from everything, and it's not really the point of what we're going after. And like I said, practice is not just on the cushion, it's in life, and in life, much of the time our eyes are open. So it's very good practice to meditate with the eyes open, but the gaze just rests lightly on what's in front of you. It's not an intense focus. It's not out of focus with your eyes crossed. Whatever that may be, in front of you, you may want to have something in front of you that's somewhat inspiring, like a view or a Buddha or a flower, but it shouldn't be something that creates a story in your mind. Like it shouldn't be a busy street scene where you're going to see things happening and your mind's going to be kind of drifting off into the story of what you're seeing. In general, the body is like a guitar string, right? Not if it's a guitar string's too tight, it doesn't make a tone, and if it's too slack, it doesn't make a tone. But with just enough tension, it becomes, supple but strong enough to make a vibration that makes that pleasant sound. So settle into this position and rest in that position. Let the tension of your body go, besides, whatever's keeping you erect, keeping you straight. Everything else just go. And even mentally, you can just, with an exhale, let the mental activity and buzzing. Just go, settle. Become aware of the breath as it moves, where your upper lip meets your nose. Just become aware of it. We're not doing some deep breath. We're not doing a shallow, just an easy, natural breath. Let's start the timer. I'll talk a little bit. There may be some new people here. For those of you who are very new, just be aware of the breath moving. Do 10 inhales and maybe count 10 inhales and exhales. The angle of your gaze actually should follow kind of the bridge of your nose. So it's not just straight, because your head is a little bit tilted, so it almost follows that slight angle. Again, focus on 3 more of those inhales and exhales. Count 3 more of those. Stay with it while I speak. See if you can hear what I'm saying while you're staying with your awareness of your breath moving. You don't have to count it at this moment, but just be aware of it. Chances are what's going to happen while you're doing this, thoughts will come into your mind. That is not a mistake. That is not bad. That is not wrong. That is not failure to meditate. That is called practice. Part of the practice. Dealing with the thoughts and working with the thoughts is another part of the practice. So when the thought arises in your mind, the key is becoming aware that a thought has arisen. So you might be focusing your attention, focusing your mind on this point between your nostrils and upper lip, and you're becoming aware of the breath, but suddenly you're thinking about an appointment you have later in the day, or you're distracted by the noise of the air conditioner going on and off, or your neighbor downstairs making noise. The mind thinks that's what it does. Thoughts arise. We become, during this practice, aware of the thought that has arisen, and just notice it rather than judge it, get into the story of it, push it away. I'm bad for having thoughts. This is not the right practice. No, you just see the thought. Okay, I'm thinking about what time I'm going to have to leave my house to get there on time today. I'm aware of the thought, and then say to yourself, back to the breath. So let the awareness of the thought bring you back to the breath. So you're using this thought that has arisen to go back to this practice, back to this technique, if you will. Let's do 10 more of those breaths. And this time, make a real effort to be aware of the thought, and then back to the breath. Very simple. Back to the breath means bringing your awareness to that space, your attention to that space where the air is moving. can shift your weight or your posture if you're getting too tight or uncomfortable. Don't feel like you're locked in and can't move. Stay with the breath. Back to the breath when you're aware of a thought. Back to the breath when you're aware of a thought. Don't judge the thought. Don't continue it. Just be aware of it. It arose. Those of you who've done this with us for a while or before know that we use another technique. And this one, same posture, same breathing, same awareness of how the thoughts are arising. But here we use a metaphor that the mind is like a clear blue sky, limitless, infinite, stainless, calm, clear. That's the mind. And a thought, so we're kind of resting our body and our mind in that spaciousness, if you will, settling into it, bathing in it. It's inside us, it's outside us, being with it as we breathe. And the thoughts that come, okay, I'm having a thought, am I communicating properly this technique? The thought that I just had, now I imagine as a cloud that has arisen in this clear, limitless, quiet, calm blue sky. And I'm going to watch that cloud dissolve back into the sky. It came out of that sky, it didn't come from anywhere else and go into the sky. It arose from within the very essence of the sky. And when I watch it dissolve like a regular, like a real cloud, this dissolves back into the sky from which it came, from which it emerged, it was generated, and leaves no trace. Thought is the same thing. Now, thoughts can be repetitive and come back. There might be things that we think about on a repetitive basis, ongoing basis. But in the we're talking about this thought that has arisen in the moment, being aware of it and letting it go and go back to the breath, go back to settling in that clear blue sky. Sky-like nature of mind. Talk very often in Buddhism that the nature of mind is like space, like sky, like just this complete openness, clarity, limitless potentiality, natural great peace, natural great perfection. So you can use either of those right now, those techniques. Back to the breath, if you feel that is working better for you, or focusing on the breath, settling into the sky-like nature of mind, almost seeing it within your mind, that you're inside it. And the thought, whatever the thought is, positive or negative, we're not judging it as bad or good, but whatever the thought is, it could be a thought with a lot of energy to it, it could be a thought with a lot of anger to it, or a lot of love to it, or whatever it is. See it as a cloud that has arisen in the sky-like nature of mind, and watch it dissolve, settle back into the calm. The trick here is just recognizing that the thought actually has arisen, because our tendency and habitual um, approach has always been just like this running monologue of thoughts, running, internal dialogue that just one thought leads to another like a chain, interlinked, and it just goes on, without interruption because we're not aware of it. Well, let's do 10 more of those breaths, or if you're using the sky, then just rest in the sky, and we'll time it for you. Okay, very good. We're going to move on to some questions. So there's a Q&A function in the toolbar, and just in general, if you want to learn about other teachers, what books to read as beginners, we have a list of teachers and books on the Solidago Productions website, which you used to register for this. So check that out if you want more information. And a lot of the one thing we always encourage, if any of this is of interest to you, and that you really kind of this basic Buddhist talk that we're doing here in meditation, we always suggest to find an authentic teacher from an authentic lineage. Victoria and I are students, so this is like a study group. We're not teachers, and we can teach meditation technique, which is kind of just a nuts and bolts kind of thing. But actual Dharma and teaching, really, you need the benefit of an authentic teacher from an authentic lineage, and there's a list of them. Just of our suggestions, of course, you find your own path through this if that's what you want to do, and you should do that. And these teachers teach also on Zoom now. The miracle of modern technology is that, and we're always talking about the danger of technology and how the negativities of it, but this is a positive thing about technology. You can actually attend teachings and even like empowerments, which are kind of like very special practices that usually were in secret, or you'd have to go long ways to get it. They do these online, so you don't have to have a teacher in your town. You can make a connection. You can even take refuge and become a Buddhist on Zoom by making connection to these teachers that are through their generosity and kindness of giving teachings to the whole world at one time. So there's a lot of resources now, basically. I've been finding myself in an increasing state of anxiety about the political climate and culture as we move toward the election, as I'm sure many have. Thoughts on how we can move through this time with compassion toward those we find ourselves at odds with. Ways to maintain equanimity during this time. Well, first of all, cultivating compassion, maintaining equanimity, are things that we are on we use the methods of Buddhism for, while we're on, the Buddhist path. So all of the above, like we were saying, begin a meditation practice, make a connection with teachers, read some Dharma books, watch some teachings online. The more you kind of immerse yourself into the practice, definitely you're going to have tools on dealing with finding compassion for those that you're at odds with, working even with your states of anxiety, and ways to maintain equanimity during this time. I think you know, Buddhism is not a theistic religion, right? And unlike theistic religions, it's not like a set of rules that Buddha said to you, you know, these are the commandments of Buddha, that you must do this and you must not do this. The first turning the wheel, Buddha said, to be a human being, there's suffering. If you don't want to suffer, maybe do this and don't do this, try this, don't do this, right? It's not, it's kind of the opposite, right? He's saying, you can, Buddha's not saying, you know, follow me because I know the truth and this is what people should be doing, you know, morally, and this is wrong not to do this. The teaching was more like, we're suffering. If you don't want to suffer, here's some methods. Which is a big distinction from, I think, a lot of approaches that many of us have had in the past spiritually. And it's important to remember that. So there's many techniques, you know, you can use on having compassion, right? There's, you know, Tonglen, there's, you know, in Buddhism, mathematically, they say, because we've been reincarnated and been, you know, different life forms for countless eons, unmeasurable time, that mathematically every sentient being has been our parent at one, you know, point or another, or a really dear loved one at some point or another. You know, you can use that awareness of, like, you know, all sentient beings who have been our mothers at one point in time, you know, think about people that way. There are many, many, many techniques. What's more important than me just saying, try this or try that, I think, is for you to realize that the anxiety and maybe the lack of compassion or anger or hatred that maybe you have for people that you're at odds to are things that can be conquered through this kind of path. You want to elaborate?
You know, anxiety is us projecting certain scenarios in the future, remembering that they are our ideas, they are our projections. So at the same time, we can also project good scenarios. We can, you know, choose A or B scenario, C, D, etc. So we can give energy to more positive scenarios if we're going to indulge in the future. Also, just kind of keeping a little bit of a looseness from these projections by knowing that they are our projections. You know, where future is not something that there is. It's, you know, it's our version of what may be. There's nothing stable about that. And so, you know, entertaining certain statistics and statistical outcomes, but at the same time, having a little bit of a looseness, a distance, you know, and also, you know, remembering karma, you know, whatever karmically may appear, because, you know, we have individual karma, we have group karmas, social karmas, you know, things are going to be as they're going to be. So whatever the outcomes, we also have to be able to live with them. If we live a certain kind of a lifestyle and an illness arrives, you know, we have such a shock and such a surprise. But, you know, the outcomes are the results of many, many gatherings of, you know, the seeds and the circumstances around them. They're products, they're byproducts of our life, directly our life. We contributed to all the things that we're experiencing right now. You know, taking all of that into account, and of course, unfailingly always remembering that even if certain people, you know, you're observing, you know, people who are filled with hatred, who are filled with selfishness, who are fueled all by fear, that these are temporary mental states. They're not going to last forever. This moment will arise and it will dissolve. So not having like this whole, you know, this life, is arisen to dissolve. I mean, it's a movement between birth and death. And, so just kind of keeping things in perspective and not fixating only on our fears and projections, remembering to do our positive work of because when we purify our mental stream, we enter into it, into society. We're also like purifying the space in which we're interacting through our mental state, because our mental state, there's no inner and outer. I mean, this whole thing of like we're hiding things, and as long as we're not saying or acting on things, they don't affect anything. We bring our mental states into everything. It's like a little drop that goes into the glass. So working on ourselves, and of course, we're all calculating statistically because we have logic. We have that portion of the mind that, like the right and left hand, which holds the glass, the relative mind. It will do that kind of work for us. It's supposed to, our survivalist instincts are kicking in and things like that. But just, always remembering like the bigger picture and this little moment in time, the bigger picture and this moment in time. And, remembering to make aspirations for all those beings who are now engulfed in this river of hatred and racism and all these kinds of things that are really swallowing up our country. We're all going through this. But our job is not just to judge them and hate them and fall into the same river of burning molten lava with them, but to be the fireman and bring in the water and bring the fire truck and try to calm the situation down by checking our own mental states. It's very easy for us all, we all have that, of looking at others and saying this and that and, bad and good, but this bad and good comes from us. And so making sure that more good comes from our side and less this is bad comes from our side. At the same time, not losing track and awareness of what is happening so that we can maneuver and counter and know how to navigate. At the same time, not becoming fixated and always remembering the big picture, the Buddha nature picture, the absolute, not just the relative.
The teaching we were at last night, Kang Sar Rinpoche said that anxiety is always a state of mind that's in the future, anticipating the future, obsessing on the future. And sadness is a state of mind that's thinking about the past. So when you're in the present, when you're really kind of situated in the present, those things are not really there, But for you, a lot of the questions we get asked, more than anything else, are how to deal with difficult people, difficult emotions, anxiety, and we had His Eminence Kalu Rinpoche generously taught this class in May, I believe, which is online. You can see it. Nick, is it up online? And that's called, what's the YouTube channel called? I'll let you know what that is in a second. Nick will tell us. But he gave a class specifically on dealing with negative emotions. My best advice, though, because these questions always come up, what should I do in this situation and that? Really, if you really want to have some kind of tools and progress along this path, find a teacher from an authentic lineage, bathe yourself in these teachings, watch them online, search for them, read their books, try to make, connections with them, go to their teachings or watch their teachings online. It's really, really where the practice takes root.
And also, it's very important to make a shift from difficult things, obstacles, difficult people, to an internal, that which colors everything as difficult this, difficult that, bad this, bad that. It is our mind that is placing those judgments and enhancing our emotional, anxious response to all of that. Remembering that these things are labels that come from our mind, finding the source cause, the reason, the really like the primary cause, not just the conditions and the consequences of finding the primal cause. Why do we consider and respond to, you know, these people as negative, these conditions as difficult? Because, and ultimately what we'll always find at the bottom of it is the self that gets threatened. We perceive certain things as threatening to us. We do not want them, such as we don't want difficulties, and we seek and crave pleasure. You know, a wisdom mind is something that knows and sees that and can experience both those states that are difficult and, you know, the hopes and fears in a similar way without getting hijacked by them. So that's very, very important, bringing the practice more to the, you know, from this outer level of very, very childish thinking to the more inner level of where this factory of negativity, this production of negativity is actually happening from, and working with that and working on that.
So the YouTube where you'll find the Kalu Rinpoche is a Meditation with Michael Imperioli on YouTube channel. Okay. What do you recommend if meditation makes you very sleepy, becomes hard to keep focused? One thing you could do is, like, if you're keeping your eyes open, to raise the angle of your gaze. That often kind of can kind of wake you up a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I don't know your physical surroundings and your posture and how you're doing it. You know, there might be something in the room. Maybe it's too hot. Maybe it's, you know, if you, maybe you should also just start with small sessions too, short sessions, 5 minutes or something. Maybe you're trying to do it too long and then you're getting sleepy and you're kind of beating yourself up for it or something. Hard to keep focus. It is hard to keep focus on meditation. Is not easy. It's simple, right? The technique, there's really not that much to it, but it's not easy. So with practice, I think you just get more familiar and used to how to maintain focus and, being aware of when you're not, when your mind drifts off. I mean, both of us have been meditating for many years, and,
With meager results.
we sit down on the no, not meager results. You sit down on the cushion and you have a busy mind and you have a lot of thoughts. No, it's not. I wouldn't say meager results. That's not right. But being in Dharma for many years, there's a lot of rewards and things that are making what you put. The more you commit to it, I think the more you get out of it. It enriches your life, and you feel more of a connection to yourself and to others in a lot of ways. But it doesn't mean that, because you've done it for a while, you're going to sit down and immediately go into this state where you're just totally peaceful and there's no thoughts moving around. The mind thinks. It's, it does have that kind of energy, and it will. And it's just a matter of being familiar with that and working with that.
And, to counter sluggishness, you really examine yourself. I mean, we're working with our mind when we're doing meditation. We're not just sitting down to relax. That's very important to understand the difference between just sitting, chilling out, like at the end of the yoga class, when we take a couple of breaths and we relax our muscles. Meditation has nothing to do with anything like that. Yes, there is the settling of the mind, but the settling of the little fluff we call thoughts, the manifestations of the mind, the little waves, are only so that we can observe the nature of the mind. So the mind, watching the mind, is very, very awake and very present. If it's difficult for you, because that is something very difficult, and if you find yourself like falling into these kinds of sluggish mental states, you may also try active practices such as practicing on the welfare of others. You can use visualization practices of Tonglen, where you're visualizing taking their suffering, dissolving it in your heart, and sending white light from your heart to them. You may use for immeasurables also, to purify and quell difficult situations in the world. Maybe alternate between shamatha, which is calm abiding, and more active kinds of forms of meditation on love.
How do you incorporate meditation into daily life while having a busy schedule? You just do, you have to do it. You have to not be lazy, because that's a big thing, for me, conquering laziness. It's like incorporating anything new that's really important into your life. You know what I mean? If the doctor says to you, you need to exercise 20 minutes a day or you're going to have a heart attack in a month. Well, you're probably going to find those 20 minutes. This has to become important enough that you're going to put it into your daily schedule. Like I said before, start with short sessions. Start with 5 minutes, but make it a session. Don't do it while you're doing something else. Sit down on the cushion, do the technique, put the timer on if you want, that kind of thing. You have to, and then you will naturally start to do this the more you do it when you see the value in it too.
I mean, I'm taking your question to be how do you incorporate it into all daily activity? Maybe I'm not reading.
No, she's saying meditation into the daily, into a schedule, she was saying.
But even though I misread your question, I'm also, we practice all the time. And what practice means is that we are aware of our mind aware of itself. Instead of like you're out there and you're talking to someone, you're going, she's like this, he's like that, da 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 da, this whole narrative that your mind thinks that there's an objectified something out there. Rather, the focus of the mind, which is called meditation, is what is my mind thinking right now? How is it perceiving that person? Am I engulfed in this, stream of negativity, stupor, etc., etc.? Is my mind clear and compassionate? Do I feel like connection to wisdom, or am I just spewing out these conceptual kinds of, habitual patterns? And so the mind is always practicing in all the situations. Every time there's a movement of body, speech, and mind, the mind is aware.
But that kind of awareness, has to be developed through having a formal sitting practice. It's not just going to come because you make a decision to it. Having that basis of formally sitting every day or almost every day can lead to that kind of level of awareness, because that's how you know what that is. So incorporating it into a daily schedule as a formal practice, as just sitting meditation practice, that's an effort that needs to be made. It's just something that we have to kind of get our butts on the cushion. It's very important.
Yeah, and you have to prioritize knowing your own mind, because life will just dissipate very, very quickly on the coffee and the movies and the phone and, chatting about, our life will be spent on just this insignificant nothing, even when we're doing like, most of us are not engaged 24/7 in this amazing saving humanity and other sentient beings from peril all day long. Most of us, our jobs, our engagements, our meetings, our interactions are, small little, kinds of those, wasting the precious human existence moments. So prioritizing knowing one's mind so that we can direct the vehicle of the precious human existence toward much better, toward meaningful and really suitable human pursuits is very important. What could be more important?
What practices do you recommend for starting the day? Exactly what we just did. Sitting meditation practice. That's very good. Go ahead.
Sorry, because you can get to set your intention for the whole day. That's the time when you say, all day I'm going to be aware. I'm going to make sure that my body, speech, and mind are mindful toward others. I'm not going to be reactive. I'm going to decide. I'm going to be an agent. I'm going to be guided by my clarity. I'm going to be guided by my mind. And you decide that in the morning. And the more you do it, the more it becomes habitual. You replace the usual negative thoughts, that kind of like cesspool we live in all day long, for a much more clearer state of mind where interactions become beautiful and meaningful.
How does one become an official Buddhist? Well, what that means is taking refuge. You take refuge vows, where you're taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha, the congregation or group, your fellow Buddhists. But how do you do that? You can do that in an online setting, but you do it with a teacher. So you make a connection by attending some online or in-person teachings of a teacher, an investigator teacher, and you're actually taking refuge, refuge vows with a teacher. That's usually how it's done. And there are teachers that offer those refuge vows online. So it's, you have to do some investigation, and in the meantime, you can practice. You don't have to be, have taken refuge vows to practice, any of these teachings. But if you want to take refuge vows, you do it, through a teacher. I'm starting a new job. Looking for resources that help me continue working hard and be mindful of maintaining balance. Anything I can do inside or outside of meditation to stay grounded and present in the moment. I mean, meditation. I mean, it's like there's nothing inside or outside of meditation. It is meditation. I think that can make you stay grounded. Again, the answer to a lot of these questions is to practice, to kind of delve into the practice, to study, to make connections with the teacher. It's like if you want to play a musical instrument, right? You're not going to learn that musical instrument just by listening to music or thinking about it. You have to practice it. So, there's methods for that. So you need a method. And Buddha has given us methods to work with our minds, So it's not, there's not, I don't want to be misleading and think if I just give you this little tip to do, it's like we're here as a practice group, primarily, meditation and basic Buddhism. So these are obviously tools that we think are worth, paths and tools worth pursuing, to help you. And, the wisdom of the teachers, like what I read this morning, right? Khandro Rinpoche, someone like that. I mean, if you watch Khandro Rinpoche for 20 minutes a day, that's going to probably help you. Like you say here, continue working hard and be mindful of maintaining balance of your life. If you really, listen to her or one of these masters every day and think about what they're saying, it's going to have an effect. You know what I mean? So I don't want to just say, just do this or just do that. It's like these methods, there's many of them, and there's resources available to you.
And I wanted to say, if you take the word meditation and replace it with awareness, mind aware of its own activity, you can do it with every breath, with every action. It's a little bit difficult to keep focus like that, right away. You have to build up to it. It is a training. That's why, we train. But listen to your speech, observe your reactions. That's what practice is, or meditation in daily life. At work, take everything that comes to you, every interaction is an opportunity of practice. Think of everything as an opportunity for practice, every little piece of life, and approach it mindfully like that. Take a moment, do introspection. Don't engage in that usual waste of human resource, judgment, and call this and stick a label and then react to it. Just using introspection. What is my mind doing? What is the feeling of my mind? What am I projecting to the outside through my words and my actions? Just connecting intrinsically to all the energy that comes in and out. That's how we use meditation is integrated into everything.
One last question. I'm new. I appreciate this class. I was raised Catholic, and in the last 10 years, I've lost sense of faith. My grandmother, while a practicing Catholic, passively talked about Buddhism, had many items and books in her house that showed a side of her I never talked with her about. I've begun to form my own ways of practicing inner morals and an awareness of my surroundings and happenings. Is this frowned upon? In other words, pooling from different practices and faith. There's no one that frowns. You know what I mean? You're kind of assuming that there's like this authority that's going to say this is right or this is wrong or this is it, or like I said, Buddha realized that in this human body we're going to suffer, right? We're going to be suffered. That's definitely a common quality of our existence, because we cling to this inherent sense of self, and there's a path that leads us away from that suffering. He didn't say, this is what I want you to do because I know, and this is what you shouldn't do. He was just saying, kind of like laying down reality. So there's no authority who's frowning on you discovering ways that are meaningful to you to have some kind of spiritual outlook on your life. That's up to you. And if this, whatever you're practicing, brings you the qualities that you've been looking for, or some kind of improvement that you feel, that's up to you. And if one day you feel like you want to take refuge, or you never want to take refuge, or you want to work with a teacher, or you don't want it, that's all up to you. So there's nobody frowning upon what you're doing. Yeah.
And also nobody ever said you have to be a Buddhist to be compassionate or have wisdom
Or meditate.
All religious traditions have those portions. There are specific Buddhist methods that you have to be a Buddhist in order to be able to receive them. At the same time, really, like Garchen Rinpoche, the quote that Michael read at the top of the class, she didn't say you have to be a Buddhist to practice this mind and heart of love. You just have to have awareness and, shed this attachment to the self. I mean, they're not coexistent. You're either going to have light or dark. It's like that. So there's either going to be love or selfishness. They're not. And of course there will be degrees of light and dark, or love and selfishness, and we don't have to practice specific traditions. Every tradition, to a certain extent, has a lot of these things. I mean, as far as I know, most of the religious traditions include things of love and compassion. And most Buddhists are not born Buddhists, not Westerners at least. We all come from different traditions. Just take your time and see how your path unfolds. The important thing is not to stick a label. I am a Buddhist, I am a this. The important thing is to know the state of our mind, whether that mind has love and light, has wisdom, or it has selfishness. That's it. It's all about awareness. Just keeping in mind that happiness is a state of mind, and suffering, unhappiness, is a state of mind. And there are reasons for why we have one as opposed to another. And we have means to stay in one or to go to the other. We are the producers of the states of suffering, because they're states of our mind, and we are produced. Some people are never happy even if they're going to live in paradise, because that's their state of mind. They'll suffer some little insect biting their toe, or there's too much sun, there's not enough clouds, there's too much foliage, and other people under the most dire difficult circumstances will share the last breadcrumb with someone else. They're not going to say I don't have enough. They just say, well, in this very second, in this moment, I have this little piece of bread. I'm going to share it with three other, or with whatever many people. And they create that state of mind through their wisdom and heart. So, and that exists in all traditions. So don't be discouraged. Just practice.
I want to thank Nick Solidio, producer, who, through his kindness and generosity, this class is possible. So now we dedicate the merit from today's class, whatever merit generated through this virtuous activity, we're going to dedicate it to the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions.
May they be liberated
from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. We will see you probably in 2 weeks. Next week, we will not be here, but see you soon enough. Take care.